Once upon a time, the Maiden of the Sun was looking down at the world, and she saw a fellow. Martin was his name, and he was a dreamy fellow of a wanderer, more than a little curious about the world. And, well, she gazed at him with something like longing. And Martin, just at that moment, he looked up at the sun with something like longing in his eyes. And he was thinking to himself how he loved travelling across the world, and how he would like to be in the heavens with the sun, and then he could travel the skies just like he travelled across the surface of the earth. And this was more than enough invitation than the Maiden of the Sun needed, for she, among her many magical powers, could listen to the thoughts of people as they went around on the world, and she grabbed him by his ankle and she scooped him up and took him into the sky. And there Martin spent a whole week with the sun, and, well, it was brilliant. He got to see many wondrous things, but at the end of it he was begging her to let him return home, because you see, it was very hot in the sky with the sun, and also he missed his sister. Martin was a twin. He had grown up with his twin sister and they lived on a farm, and he wanted to go home to her. But the sun, well, she burst into tears. She said, "Martin, I've seen your future, and you're going to be eaten by evil spirits if I let you return to the earth." Martin said, "Nonsense. Let me return and I promise I'll come and visit you soon." Now, the sun wasn't wrong, because meanwhile, back down on earth, in the farm where Martin lived, his sister had been gobbled up by an evil sorcerer. And this evil sorcerer, she had been waiting to eat Martin and his sister for their whole lives. Now she had gobbled his sister, and she was waiting for Martin to return home. And, as a disguise, she had used her magic to take the form of his sister. Up in the sky, the sun had just agreed to let Martin return home with a heavy heart, and she had given him 3 gifts. One was a winged horse that he could use to fly up and visit her whenever he wanted. The second was a comb from her bedside table, and the third was a gemstone, only small but of incomparable beauty. Martin had taken these gifts, and he had flown back down to the surface of the world, and he had gone home, and there he had found his sister waiting for him, and she was preparing a meal. For you see, when the sorcerer looked at Martin, she thought he was looking rather thin, and he could do with a little bit of fattening up. And so night after night she fed him meal after meal, each one bigger than the last. Martin slowly started to gain weight, and the sorcerer, well, she was excited, for her meal was surely nearly ready. She decided to feed him one more thing. One night she put that nice, plump, winged horse from the stable in the pot, and she prepared it for Martin's tea. Now Martin asked his dear sister what they were going to eat, and she said, "Now, Martin, I'm not going to tell you what we'll have for dinner. Just sit at the table and it'll be ready shortly. I'm just going to go out in the garden and fetch some herbs." But cheeky Martin went over to the pot to see what they were having for dinner. He was curious like that, but of course, as soon as he lifted the lid, he saw that it was the winged horse that was being cooked, and he knew that his dear sister would never do this, and he knew he had been tricked. And when the sorcerer came back in the kitchen, she saw that he knew. And she took her true form, and she leapt at him. But quick as a flash, he jumped out of the window, and he ran away from the farm and down the hill. And to give herself some energy, and because she was already rather peckish, the sorcerer, she gulped down the winged horse in the pot, and then she gave chase after Martin, and she got closer and closer and closer, and Martin reached into his pocket and he pulled out the comb that had been given him by the Maiden of the Sun, and he flung it down on the earth, and there sprang up a forest between him and the sorcerer. And Martin breathed a sigh of relief, and he thanked the stars above his head. And then he heard the terrible sound of crunching wood as the sorcerer gnawed her way through the forest, and once again she was gaining on him, and once again he was running for his life, and he reached into his pocket and he pulled out the gemstone, and he was about to throw it down on the ground, and for sure it would become a mountain between him and the sorcerer, but instead he gobbled it down, and inside his belly it began to grow and grow and grow. The hardness in him expanded, and he became a great ball that was rolling across the landscape and tumbling away from the sorcerer. But it hadn't put her off, and she still wanted to gobble up Dreamy Martin, and she was still gaining on him moment by moment. And just then the rosy fingers of the dawn came into the sky, and the Maiden of the Sun, she saw Martin was being chased by the sorcerer, and she flung him up into the heavens where he would be safe. And indeed he was safe there. And in fact, I'm sure you've seen him, for we call him the Moon. And you see him up there in the sky with the sun, or else on his own, exploring the heavens to his heart's content, just as he once explored the surface of the earth. And the sun, well, she killed that evil sorcerer, lest she go and bother any other pair of dreamy twins. But when the sorcerer died, out of her belly came an egg, and the sun warmed the egg until it hatched, and out of this egg came an owl. And that owl must have had a bit of the winged horse, for it was covered in feathers, and it was gifted with the ability to fly. But also it must have had a bit of the sister, because it longed for Martin. And every night this owl would fly as high into the sky as she could, and one night she flew so high that she caught a little slice, a little shard of Martin in her great big round eyes. And the next night she caught another shard, and every night she came back with another crescent of the moon in her eyes, until Martin had shrunk down until he was nothing. And then the Maiden of the Sun, she began to replenish Martin, and added slice by slice, crescent by crescent, until Martin was full once more. And then the owl longed once again for Martin, and she shrieked and flew high up into the sky until she could come down with a crescent of him in her great round eyes. And like that, Martin is taken to be with the owl in the forest, and then replenished by the sun until he is fully himself in the skies once more. And that is how we know Martin the Moon, and that is how he came to be the way he is. The end.